The grand halls of Buckingham Palace had always echoed with history, power, and the silent whispers of the crown's burden. But on this unusually cold morning, they were filled with something far more fragile: fear. King Charles III, the monarch whose reign had been marked by both controversy and reluctant stability, lay ill in his private chambers, his health deteriorating in ways the public could only behind the palace walls. The truth was far more sinister than the tabloids could ever get. His illness had not only weakened his body, it had torn open the already festering wounds within the royal. For months, perhaps even years, the relationship between Prince William and Prince Harry had been one of cold shoulders, distant stares, and harsh words delivered through press leaks rather than heartfelt conversations. Harry, the spare-turned renegade, had crossed the ocean with Meghan to carve his own path far from the institution that he claimed had crushed his. William, the heir, had stayed behind, shouldering the responsibility, the tradition, and the image of the monarchy with a stiff upper lip that barely concealed his anger at his. But fate, cruel, unrelenting, and always politically inconvenient, had dealt them a card neither. King Charles had fallen gravely ill, and with the monarchy facing a potential crisis of continuity, the two brothers were summoned back into each other's orbit. Harry had flown in from California under the shadow of night, slipping past photographers with Meghan remaining behind, a move that the press immediately spun into 1,000 narratives. Is Meghan not welcome? Some headlines asked. Is she keeping her distance to let Harry repair the damage? Others speculated. The truth was more complicated, as it always was. Meghan's absence was both a shield and a weapon, a way to avoid the chaos and to remind the palace of the autonomy they had fought so bitterly to achieve. William, on the other hand, had been at the king's bedside for weeks, balancing his public duties with private anger. He had watched his father's condition worsen, had listened to doctors speak in veiled terms about critical thresholds and upcoming. He knew what they meant. The time for unity was now, or there would be nothing left to unify. When the two brothers finally stood face to face in the drawing room of Clarence House, the air was thick with unspoken accusation. Harry's jaw was tight, William's hands were clasped behind his back, a soldier awaiting an unwelcome. You look tired, Harry said finally, his voice betraying none of the emotion churning. And you look present, at least, William replied dryly. It was a start, an awkward. The Palisades had devised a plan. The brothers would make a joint appearance, visit their father together, and issue a carefully worded statement that would assure the public the royal family stood united during the king's illness. It was a performance as much as a duty, but in the House of Windsor, those two things had always been the. But behind the scenes, it was anything but harmonious. Harry had his grievances, unanswered phone calls, icy receptions, the feeling that he had been cast out and yet constantly pulled back when. William had his own. A sense of betrayal, a brother who had turned their private pain into global headlines, a family name tarnished in the pursuit of truth, or at least, Harry's version of it. Their conversations over the following days were less about reconciliation and more about survival. King Charles, frail but still sharp, made it clear from his hospital bed, you do not have to love each other right now. But you will stand together. For me. For the crown. For the people. And the weeks that followed were a study in royal theatre. Harry and William were photographed leaving Mary's hospital together, their faces a mix of forced composure and barely concealed. At charity events, they shook hands and smiled for the cameras, the tabloids heralding a new era of brotherly unity even as insiders whispered about tense dinners and separate wings of the palace being occupied. But the cracks could not be sealed with protocol alone. Late one evening, in the private library where portraits of their ancestors glared down like judges, the two finally spoke without filter. Do you even want to fix this? Harry asked, pacing the carpet. Or do you just want to make it look? William leaned against the mantelpiece, his silhouette cast long by the floor. Sometimes, looking fixed is the only way anything survives in this family. Harry stopped. That's the problem. It's always about the survival of the image, never the survival of the people in it. William didn't answer right away. He knew there was truth in Harry's words, just as he knew there was manipulation in the way Harry wielded. And yet, as the days wore on, something unexpected began to happen. The shared burden, the endless meetings with doctors, the pressure of the press, the late-night calls from aides insisting they must get ahead of the narrative forced them into the same trend. They began to talk. Not about the past, not about the Oprah interview or the Netflix deals, but about the present, their father, their children, the monarchy that was both a privilege and a prison. King Charles, watching from his hospital bed with a wry smile, knew this was the closest thing to peace he was. The world saw the photos, two brothers standing side by side at a Remembrance Day ceremony, their eyes wet not just from the cold but from the weight of everything unspoken between them. The headlines screamed of unity, of healing, of a family finally putting its fracture. But the truth was more fragile. Their reconciliation was reluctant, their smiles rehearsed, they were not brothers mending a bond, they were princes performing a duty. And in the monarchy, sometimes that was enough. Yet the story did not end there. As King Charles's health wavered, the stakes only grew higher. Discussions of succession began to leak. Old rivalry stirred among courtiers who saw an opportunity to align with one brother over the other. Meghan's absence, once a footnote, became a question mark that hovered over every negotiation. Would she return? Would she sabotage this fragile truce from afar? Or would she, for once, let Harry navigate the minefield? And in the quiet moments, when the cameras were gone and the palace halls echoed only with the sound of distant bells, Harry and William sometimes found themselves sitting in the same room, not as heirs or exiles, but as two men who had loved the same mother, endured the same loss, and were now forced to carry. "Do you think he'll make it?" Harry asked one night, staring at the rain streaking down. William didn't answer immediately. Then, softly, "I think he's holding on for us to stop." Harry let out a long, tired breath. "Then I suppose we owe